and accused triple murderer Erin Patterson took the stand today to tell the jury, in her own words, her own story.
After watching on for 5 weeks, wearing a long-sleeved black and white paisley shirt and dark pants, Erin Patterson entered the witness box. Patterson told the court about her life in the month leading up to the fatal lunch.
My children had just recently settled into a new school. I had changed schools at the start of that term.
The court heard that Patterson was accepted into a Bachelor of Nursing and Midwifery at the beginning of 2023, but had deferred due to her daughter's health.
We had it under control by the middle of 2023, so I was planning to take that placement at the start of 2024.
Patterson recounted her struggles with her own mental health.
I'd been fighting a never-ending battle of low self-esteem most of my adult life.
Her testimony then turned to her relationship with her in-laws.
I had felt for some months that my relationship with the wider Patterson family, particularly Don and Gail, had a bit more distance or space put between us. We saw each other less. Perhaps I wasn't being invited to so many things.
And her relationship with her estranged husband, Simon. The court heard they separated several times between 2009 and 2015.
We just couldn't communicate well when we disagreed about something. We could never communicate in a way that would make each of us feel heard and understood.
Erin Patterson is expected to continue her testimony tomorrow. She has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
Erin Pearson is the Age's crime and justice reporter, and she was in the Morwell court once again today. Erin, this is a big moment in the case. We should point out the accused doesn't have to give evidence. So what was the reaction in court like when it was announced that she would take the stand?
That's right. After 20-something days of prosecution evidence, about 3 o'clock today, one of the Crown prosecutors stood up and said, finally, we close our case. And Defence Barrister Colin Mandy stood up and said, I call Erin Patterson. There wasn't a huge reaction in the room, but you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody was sort of looking around at one another. It was another packed day in the courtroom, not a spare seat to be seen. But nobody dared make a sound at that point. Everybody was just waiting in anticipation for the accused to take to the stand.
Yeah, the jury hasn't heard Erin speak so far, but how did Erin appear during her time on the witness stand?
Yeah, so she sat in the witness box on like an office chair that faces directly to the jury, with her defence barrister in the middle, turned to his left and firing questions at her from that direction. She was incredibly calm and collected in her evidence. She would often pause before answering. She got a little bit emotional when she was speaking about the birth of her son and about the way that they were parenting her and Simon Patterson after they separated. But she would pause, as I said, before answering a lot of questions. You could see her hands and her fingers intertwined. And when she would reach for a cup of water, there was a slight shake there. She was on the stand for less than an hour and is expected to continue giving her evidence tomorrow.
Anyone following this was hanging on every word, so Erin started talking about personal history. Did we get a lot of detail?
Yeah, so the defence really started asking questions about what was life like for Erin Patterson in July of 2023 and the months leading up to the fatal lunch. And she explained that her relationship with Simon had become less friendly and their communications were sort of more structured, and she felt that they'd lost that friendship. But she also explained that she felt like she was being perhaps invited to less family events. She felt that there was a degree of separation forming between her and her in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson. And then she explained that she was at the time also having some self-esteem issues. She was planning some weight loss surgery, and her children had also recently moved into a new school and were settling in there. So she was taken through what was going on in 2023 for her. And then the questioning switched to a bit of a timeline. She was asked when she first met Simon Patterson, when they got engaged and got married, and she was explaining, guys, that she was an atheist at the time, but it was during one visit to the Corumburra Church, the Baptist church there, that she said she had a bit of a spiritual experience and things changed, and she too, along with her husband, became Christian.
Wow. OK. Also, what about Ian Wilkinson and the extended Patterson family? How were they during Erin's testimony?
Yeah, there was about a dozen of them seated in the courtroom today. They were seated on the opposite side of the courtroom to where Erin Patterson was giving her evidence. Interestingly, about half of them stared down to the ground or straight ahead for a majority of the evidence, not turning to look at the accused woman as she spoke, whereas others were quite consistent in watching what she had to say. As you mentioned, Ian Wilkinson was also present, seated in the back room, and he sat with his arms crossed for much of her evidence. We could see him staring straight ahead for a majority of the afternoon. I only saw him glance at the accused maybe once or twice.
Erin, you mentioned she's going to continue to take the stand tomorrow. They're going through in a lot of detail. We're not even really up to the fateful events of that day. How long do you think that Erin Patterson could be on the stand here?
I think that's anybody's guess. We know that when an accused takes to the witness stand, that it's their defence barrister that asks the questions first. And once those questions are finished, the prosecution then have an opportunity to cross-examine her. I guess we wait and see what the next few days will look like.
All right. Erin, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys.